Okay, let's get to Manchester United's injury list, because there is another name joining that long list of absentees, and that name is Noussair Mazraoui, who will be out for a few weeks after undergoing a minor heart procedure. He'd been experiencing palpitations, and it's said to be a relatively common condition according to the club's statement. It's expected he'll make a full recovery and be available for selection in the next few weeks. So that's one of the stories coming out of Manchester United today. The other is that of Erik Ten Hag's future. Apparently there was a meeting with the execs, a meeting that was already planned.
Two meetings, one in Manchester and the big one in London.
The big one in London, over 7 hours, and nothing. Erik Ten Hag on one of the topics on the agenda. However, no news, no information coming out about his role and whether he'll be continuing.
They're all sitting there. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing.
How does it take you 7 hours to figure this out?
It's only a matter of time.
Seriously.
It is only a matter of time. And all they're doing is, you know, fudging it down the road, because it's going to happen. Like there's been too many mediocre games, too many bad performances. It's not, may get a little better, but it's not going to get much better. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here weekend after this one, and he's in there again, and they have another bad result, and then we have the same conversation. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the hold-up is. I'm not privy to that.
You have to think that either they don't know what the next move is, or the person they want, they can't get them right now, and they're just willing to wait. I mean, it has to be one of the two. They either don't know, or the guy they want, they can't get him right now.
But willing to wait is jeopardising any chance to get back amongst the top four, where the prize money, sponsorship, they're going to lose sponsorship money if they continue to be where they are. They're going to lose the Champions League money, and although they are a huge club that can generate money, they have, like most of the other clubs, they have this profit and sustainability issues that they have to deal with, and these all come into it. And as we currently speak, I'm not suggesting if they give the job to Ruud van Nistelrooy as an interim manager, they're going to get in the top four. But they've got to do something to give themselves a chance of getting up the table.
You need a spark. You can't sit in 14th and carry on the way you are. You need a spark. And it's easy to say that, but doing what they're doing right now, that spark isn't happening. It's just the same struggle after struggle after struggle. So you got to try something.
This is Manchester.
Because if they don't do anything, nothing's going to change, right?
This is Manchester United. He's just had the worst start they've ever had in the Premier League era, and it's broken his own record from the year before of the worst start.
Yep.
I mean, it can't continue. Well, it can. It can continue with him keep coming out and peddling the same stuff about, you know, it's a project and we're looking forward and youngsters and, you know, people keep telling me, wow, you had to go and get youngsters. Well, you had to go and get Matthias de Ligt. You had to go and get Casemiro. You had to go and get Agate. You had to go... Mazraoui's not a youngster. You know, Anthony's not a youngster. He's hopeless for the price he paid. I mean, he wouldn't be a bad player, Anthony, if you got him on a free and you could stick him on the bench and he comes on now and again. But not at 100 million or whatever it was. These are all under his watch.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, but I'm not surprised we have no news.
14th in the table, as you said, the worst start to a Premier League campaign. Closer to the relegation zone, Don, than 4th right now. What have you made of this? You've been shaking your head when you heard about that meeting today.
I just think if I was a Man United fan, it makes Ineos look a little bit weak. You've had, you know, meetings after meeting after meeting. You've not made a decision. You could at least come out and tell the Man United fans what was on the agenda in those meetings. You could at least tell the Man United fans why you think you're not sacking Erik Ten Hag. If you think he's the man, well, come out and say so. But I think it's the same conversation we're having all the time. And I'm starting to feel a little bit sorry for Erik Ten Hag, because this guy's just like living week by week. He survived the Villa game because it was one of the worst games I've seen in a long time. I commentated on the game. It was just so boring. It was incredible. Off the back of the Spurs debacle the week before when they lost 3-0. And all of a sudden he goes into the Brentford game and you go, well, what's the scoreline going to be in the Brentford game to keep him in a job? because every manager's got a number K that gets you the sack. And if he plays Brentford and it's a 3 or a 4, we'll be having the same conversation again. Ineos will have to have that meeting again. Then he goes to play Fenerbahce away, which is Jose's team, and you can bet your bottom dollar he's going to have them fired up. So at what point does someone from Ineos at least tell the Man United fans what's actually going on rather than silence? Otherwise, we just have this conversation where we're going, yeah, there's a meeting, nothing's been done, nothing's been said. I will let him manage the Brentford game. Hopefully we get a win, and that keeps him in the job for another couple of weeks. If he loses, we're going to have another meeting again. But we might not sack him because we might just give him the Fenerbahce game. It's a shambles.
Ineos have shown themselves, and I've said this, thus far to be incapable of making better football decisions. They maybe be making better business decisions with training grounds and stadiums and commercial and whatnot. But the fan on the street, the fan watching the TV, the one paying, cares more about what they see on the field. And can you imagine Jurgen Klopp, Mikel Arteta, Pep Guardiola, Unai Emery? Can you imagine if their club were publicly known to be interviewing managers, as United did in the summer, behind their back? Can you imagine what they would do? They would walk out of those clubs, right? That's what Man United have been doing. They were interviewing other managers, De Zerbi and others, Pochettino and others, Thomas Tuchel, after he won the cup final, which, by the way, somehow saved him, according to Ineos. So, thus far, they have put a lot of money in. They've brought in a lot of technical people behind the scenes, but have shown themselves at the moment unable to make the big decision on this manager. And that's what the fans care about. That is what they care about.
And it's now been more than a decade since they've come close to winning the Premier League title. When you actually look at how close they have been, or haven't been, shall we say, over these recent seasons. There was obviously that year under Jose Mourinho in second, but it was 12 points behind the leader that year. When you think back, Stevie, and obviously you can talk about Liverpool's drop-off as well, and the fact that they went decades without winning a title, a league title. It would have been unfathomable to pretty much all of us, back in the 90s at least, that this could be what comes of Manchester United. And how do you see a way out of it, that they're not just going to become someone who goes 2 more decades without winning a title again?
Well, the way out of it, because, you know, the only difference between United and Liverpool is that in terms of finance, Manchester United are always going to be up there. You know, unless they just keep ending up in the conference every year. But that's the only difference. And when you fall away, it comes down to good owners and then good decisions from the people in charge of the football side of it. That's what Manchester United need. That's what Liverpool didn't have all those years, so they were struggling. And it didn't help that they didn't have the money that United had. So Manchester United have got the finances to do it. It doesn't look like they've got the owners to do it, because that decade you're talking about, it's the same owner. And Ineos, who wanted to run the football side of it, which in theory was a good idea, because the Glazers know how to make money, and so the less they do with the football side of it, the better. I think everybody agreed on that. But so far, Ineos have done nothing to show that they know what they're doing that's any better than the last regime that was in. You know, this so-called review, every week that goes by, every week that they produce nonsense on the field, makes that review, it makes them look worse. Because if you're going to review and you're going to decide that Ten Hag's the guy to take you forward and give him a contract, then clearly people are going to question whether you know what you're doing. And so it doesn't look like the Glazers are going to go. Certainly Ineos ain't going anywhere soon. So how did they get out of the slump? How did they win the Premier League? Because right now, there is absolutely not one single reason to think that it's going to change anytime soon.
Look, when Erik Ten Hag first comes in, he's like every manager. You're giving him a pass for a period, because you're just in and it's not your players, and so of course you're getting a pass. A bit like Postecoglou, not quite so much now, but certainly in the first year is getting a pass. Arne Slot will get a pass if things go a bit wrong, because they're just in. But not now. Not now. I mean, stupid decisions. You know, they absolutely pushed for Mason Mount. Ended up spending about 70 million. And we all sat here and said, they need, and by the way, it's just not happened for him, but he's not the only one, right? And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but they didn't need him at the time. They absolutely needed somebody who could score goals. They still don't have it. But they've spent millions in these players, and Anthony and Mount, and these others. And now they've brought Hoyland in. He's a youngster. He's raw. I don't think he's going to make the grade at that level, if I'm being honest. Then Zirkzee comes in because they're struggling for a bit of money and they need somebody. He ain't very good. Let's be honest about it. So they've pushed for all these players rather than going at the time a couple of years ago for quality. Real quality that's going to make a difference. They've sort of fudged every issue and spent money in areas that they didn't really need to do it. And he's been there. He might not have been wholly involved in it, but he must have been somewhat involved in it, Ten Hag. When they were pushing for Mount, he couldn't have been there going, no. He must have been saying, yeah, I like that player, and I like that player. And it was him that pushed for Anthony. It's him that pushed for a lot of these players. Martinez, would have been him that pushed for De Ligt. So he's, he cannot be given a pass now. 12 months into the job, yes. How did it go the first 12 months? Work in progress. Not now. We're well beyond that stage now. This is his team. They've spent a lot of money, and they have been awful. So we'll see what happens. Brentford beat them. I mean, come on. Brentford beat them, and by the way, they've had a good start to the season. They beat them. There is no way, surely no way he can survive.
But if you look at the global brand that they are, as the guys were saying, Don, they're just too big when you think of how big they are across the world to be right here where they are now. Like, how are they going to find their way out of this?
Do you know what they've got to find, Kay? They've got to find a manager like Jurgen Klopp when he sat down in that press conference and he had charisma. And then that charisma, as Craig said, will get you a pass for the short period. And it's how he works behind the scenes and how he convinces. Because when you go back, I watched it again the other day, that first press conference that Jurgen Klopp delivered. And he told everyone, I'll turn it around. He went, I need time. He went, bear with me, I'll need time. From doubters to believers. And he was right, because he had the character and he could stand in front of a camera and he had charisma. And he told you he's putting journalists in their place. When Ten Hag speaks, it's almost like you feel a little bit sorry for him, because it's just same old words over and over again. And sometimes the journalists don't really push him too far. But I think what they need, and Craig mentioned quality, I'm sort of going a little bit the other way now when I'm talking player from a player's point of view, quality, and not the manager. And what they need now, and I thought of names, people like Matoma, and I thought people like Brian and Burmo at Brentford, guys that are hungry. Man United need guys that are hungry now, because they've got quality. Craig mentioned some of the players. The squad's not that bad, but for some reason the hunger's been sucked out of these players, and they're all looking very, very average, because it's very easy. Okay, basically what happens is, when you're struggling as a manager, you should at least have two things that you can hang your hat on. One is you're organised, so you organise the team. That's clearly, it's just not there. The other one is hard work. The players are not working hard enough for the manager, so he's got no chance, Erik ten Hag. So you need a manager that's going to come and demand hard work, make them organised, buy players that are hungry, who are going to run, and Man United fans can jump on board with and go, yeah, Matoma runs, and then Burma runs, and then one or two might just follow him. That's what they need. At the minute, it's just a ship that's going backwards and just not going anywhere, and it's just too big to turn around and stop, because who stops it? I have got no idea. That I mentioned to one of my pals the other day, I won't name him, and he said, when I mentioned the manager, he said to me, when I mentioned Thomas Frank to him, I think Thomas Frank might be the man, because he'll organise you. And he went, oh, that dressing room would eat him alive. And I went, well, that's your problem then. If the dressing room don't want to listen to someone like Thomas Frank, who would organise the team and have that connection between fans, players, and the staff, and get everyone unified, that's what Thomas Frank's sort of strength is. And he said, well, the dressing room would eat him alive. And I think, well, that's half the problem then. That might be your problem, if the dressing room don't want to listen to a new manager. So good luck turning that around.
Yeah, but that dressing room, the bulk of the players, a lot of them were brought in by the current manager. So whether they would listen to another one or not, they've been bringing them in. Let me go back to your analogy about Jurgen Klopp. Even when Klopp was rebuilding Liverpool, and it did take a bit of time till they were challenging and winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League. But even in the years, or whatever, 18 months, 2 years as they were coming through, you could see what was happening. It wasn't perfect because he was putting the players in place. And there was some rocky results, but you could see what he was building in the identity of the way they played. A mirror image of him, getting the fans behind them. It was dynamic, it was pressing the ball, it was getting forward, like flooding forward with pace. You were like, wow, this is going to be exciting. There is nothing. There's no identity. There was an identity to Liverpool in the club. You could see it gathering as it rolled forward. You could see it coming.
Nobody, and they weren't always winning.
No.
But nobody remembers that. All they remember is that there's something going on here. And then while they're watching the team performing, they've got the right backroom staff who are bringing in better players all the time and taking one out and putting one in. And so you, in front of your eyes, you could see it building on the park. You could see the quality in the players getting better. Everything was going like that.
But what did he do, Stevie?
Pretty much after the get-go. That, and again, all of those things I've just said, there is not one single thing that I've just said about what he did that Ten Hag has done. Not one thing.
Look at the players that he brought in. Sadio Mane, guys that'll run. Gino Wijnaldum, guys that'll run. Fabinho, runners. He brought hard workers in. You're right, along the way, he lost the Champions League final. I think he lost, if my memory's right, 3 finals before he got to win the Premier League and Champions League.
That's the thing. That's what we're talking about, your recruitment being right. All of these guys went, yes, to put the icing on the cake, they spend 80 million on Virgil van Dijk, and they do the same way Alisson. Now, those were the 2 last pieces. But all the other pieces before, your Salah and your Mane and everybody else, they were all like 30 million, 35 million. Young players coming through, players that had some sort of reputation but weren't quite right at the top. That's a complete opposite of what United are doing.
And the big money signings delivered as well.
And the big money's, yeah. But there's only 2 of them. You've got
Firmino was another one.
Firmino, 28 million or something. But then you've got United with their recruitment spending hundreds of millions on the Anthony's. Sancho never kicked a ball. I mean, there's just such a long list that you named half of them earlier. Just everything.
But Klopp would have had a big say in those players that came into the club whilst he was there.
Aye.
It was his rebuild. And my point being, I was getting away from it a little bit. The point is Ten Hag would have a big say in a lot of these players. A lot of them. And so it's his baby. It's his baby now. He's holding it. And he's not doing a very good, he's doing a terrible job. And we just, it's Man United, we talk about it. I'll guarantee you, right, he'll not be managing that club at Christmas time. But that's a big mistake for Man United, because if they leave it that long, and their current guys, they're going to be so far down that league, it's going to be embarrassing.
Well, we'll see if anything does finally come out of this meeting, but so far it has just been silence.
Jeff, it seems like this has been the talking point for the last 2 weeks. We have scrutinized everything about Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. There was an Ineos meeting that lasted 7 hours a couple days ago. What more can you tell us about the situation with Erik ten Hag as manager of Manchester United?
I think, Nico, there's probably one word that sums up exactly what is going on right now at Manchester United, and that is inertia. Nothing. There is nothing happening whatsoever, certainly that we know of. So you have to look a little bit deeper as to why that is. And cast your mind back to the summer. They won the FA Cup, and it was about, will they sack him, won't they sack him? It was expected he'd be sacked straight after the FA Cup final because it was expected they were going to lose. They interviewed several managers, they talked to several candidates, and then he gets a reprieve. They decide he's going to carry on, and they go and visit him on holiday, and they're going to stick with what they've got. Now, your problem you have there, that is in July, okay? That's in this summer. We're only just into October. So if the people that decided to back him just a couple of months ago all of a sudden say, yeah, he's hopeless, he's got to go. That does not look very good on them whatsoever. So then you can start questioning their judgment. So then you say, okay, we look at that party of people, and this is Ineos, and there's an awful lot of chiefs here. You've got Brada, you've got Brailsford, you've got Ashworth, you've got Wilcox. Are they all completely aligned as to what they think should happen, or who indeed should be the replacement? Should they find a replacement? So that's what I'm not overly surprised that we've heard nothing whatsoever. And normally something leaks out, but it has been absolutely watertight. My gut feel is they're just going to limp along to the remainder of this season, hoping that it gets better. But that in itself, I don't think Ineos have started particularly well. The first big decision they've had to make is it's just poor. It's really, really poor because the results are so poor. Nico, you just showed his results there. Where he managed to break his own record last season of being the worst finish. It's astonishing how bad Manchester United are. And when you think the people who bought in so they could run the football operations, put this very, very plain to them, this coach has overseen the worst ever start ever in the Premier League for this club, and you're saying he's the guy to continue. And you've given him 600 million to spend, of which there's very, very little resale value.
Jeff, every time that you and I are on, this is the running joke. This is the running joke. And you're already laughing at me. You already know what I'm going to say. Nico smiling. Suze is getting her laughs in. I feel like everyone in the Premier League is singing, Erik ten Hag, we want you to stay. At what point does this Manchester United job, and do we get to a point where, is this the same luster, or is there the same luster about this Manchester United job that there was in the past? Because it's shocking to me.
No chance.
It's shocking to me that a manager has been this poor consistently to start a season. Yes, trophies are one thing, but you still don't have any sense of direction of who you want to come in and what direction you want to go?
Yeah, no identity, no pattern of play, no clear cohesion. I think it's, if you think about it, though, I think it shows just what a mess Manchester United are in ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left, right across the club. They talk about things being world-class. Dave Brailsford has been on record saying we want world-class here. They've identified 2028 as the year when they'll be challenging again for the Premier League. They are a million miles from that. And they've got to get themselves their own house in order. Let's talk of a new stadium, how they're going to strip back the club, bring back its core values. But it's that they are all over the show right now. And to your question as to what has got to happen, how bad can it get before they're forced to make a change? In my experience, directors, chairmen, owners of clubs, they can deal with difficult times. The manager going through a difficult time, they can back him. But it's when the crowds turn on them, when it starts to become uncomfortable sitting in that director's box, when the crowd start chanting, sack the board, when they start feeling heat, that is when normally something that triggers a reaction. So right now, I think a lot of Manchester United fans, they were so excited when Ineos came in. So Jim Ratcliffe, a local boy, not just done good, a local boy, done billionaire, done amazing, and a real Manchester United fan. They thought this was it. This was the ticket. All of his expertise, his professionalism, his involvement in other sports, this was going to take Manchester United back to where they belong in the eyes of so many fans. What? And if you look at all the pieces, that's what should have happened. It's actually gone the opposite way.
How far removed are we from those protests at Old Trafford against the Glazers? Was that right after COVID? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was still in charge. They protested against the board, and now we're asking for the fans. Like, if the fans really want the club to go in another direction, it's against the new ownership, I guess. Protests against the board now. But it seems like, Jeff, I'm going to challenge you on that, because it has happened before, and if they want Manchester United to go into a whole direction, I think we need to start peeling back so many layers to this onion that it's not just the too many cooks in the kitchen now. It feels like ever since post-Alex Ferguson, when there was one man that was so omnipotent with the club culture, the structure, he's gone. It felt like Manchester United wasn't left in a place where they can succeed because they've gone manager after manager after manager after manager after manager, and we're still having these same conversations, Jeff.
Yeah, no, as I alluded to just there, Nico, because ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left, because he ran so much of the club has basically fallen apart because there wasn't the structure in place. But don't forget, he worked for a long time under the Glazers. So they were aware of what the structure was and how the club was being run or not run, if you like. And they're still the majority owners of the club, haven't put anything in place. So it's broken. It doesn't work as it is. The other thing, going back to the potential sacking of Erik ten Hag, if they can't get the candidate they want, what do? Get another interim manager? That'd be what, their third, fourth, fifth? I've lost count of how many interim managers
The job is yours,
they
Jeff.
will
You
have.
got it, Jeff. I know you want it.
Shriji, I will put you in charge of the club tomorrow and then name Nico and I as your assistants.
Look, it's a mess. And the fact that, as I said, it's inertia. That is what they've got right now. Nothing's happening. They're either going forwards or they're going backwards in terms of results. You look at those players there. Also as well, can you tell me a single player who's arrived at Manchester United on their watch who has improved? You look at that list now, any of you, tell me which player there has improved since he came to the club. I can't name one, can you?
Oof. Lisandro Martinez might be.
He's taken his game.
He just got dropped. He just got dropped.
He just got dropped
in spurts. I'd say he has
I would say
improved
maybe
in
a month
spurts.
ago. He was one of Manchester United's best players, but no, I'm trying to make an argument for somebody. Onana has gotten better since he got there because he started so poorly. But was he a better keeper at Inter? I would probably say so.
Inter and Ajax.
No, it's a long list. It's not as though we can leap to one and say, yeah, he's better. The other thing as well, they're 14th in the table right now. I don't think there's any panic at boardroom level. They're not thinking, we're going to get sucked into the relegation zone. Of course there isn't. But they start losing matches to other mid-table clubs, then the reality of where they are and how far they've fallen, and those fan protests start, that is when the heat will come on. It's just, which seems ridiculous because it is as plain as the nose on your face. This isn't good enough. The manager, he is not getting the best out of these players. The recruitment isn't good enough. The results, it's not they're just not good enough. They're absolutely terrible. Absolutely, they're disastrous. What more do they need the owners of the football club, particularly Ineos, who are in charge of the football operations, to see they need to make changes? And they need to make them now. Because everything in the football club stems from the results. And a new coach coming in, how many of those players is he going to want to keep? They've got a huge amount of money to spend. It's a massive job to turn this juggernaut around.
Yeah, a lot of...
Let's turn our attention then to Club Matters, Merson. A near 7-hour-long meeting for Manchester United's executives earlier this week for clarification on Erik ten Hag's future. You're sort of getting to the point where you're feeling a little bit of sympathy for him because you just want a decision to be made one way or the other.
I don't think he does. I think he wants to just keep him hanging in there. I mean, he don't want a decision. His decision, he's still manager of the football club. Yeah, I think he stays for a while now. I think he stays for a while. Always a big time, this 2-week international break. Some people do get that bit of panic in clubs and go, we've got to change our manager. It gives us 2 weeks. I think this is probably telling you he's going to get a little bit more time. I'd be quite shocked if he didn't. I mean, unless they're looking for a manager that was already in a job, but I can't see that neither. So I think it's a real confidence booster for Ten Hag. I think they're thinking, we've come this far, we might as well keep on going. And it's not the manager, it's the players.
But for the players then, do you think it gets to a stage where because of this uncertainty, it gives them even more of an excuse to keep churning out the sort of performances we've seen so far this season and actually a bit further back before that?
You hope not. You hope not. They're playing, I keep on saying it, I still think they're the biggest club in the world, Man United. Not the biggest team in the world anymore, but they're the biggest club in the world. And I just think these players need to understand, they're playing for an unbelievable football club. All you can go out and do is give your all. I thought they were unlucky on Sunday at Villa. I thought they'd done well. but they've got to do that week in, week out. You know, at the moment, they're a bag of revels. You just don't know what you're going to get. And that's what their performances have been, I would say, for the last 2 years, at least the last 2 years, where, you know, this is the first time, Rob, I would say, when they've been under pressure, he hasn't had a give-me football match. Over the last couple of years, been on a bad run. Oh, we've got a team at home that are bottom 3. Got a team at home, haven't won for 20 games away from home. He's always had that nice game. You know, he had it a couple of weeks ago against Barnsley, you know, in the cup. Oh, Barnsley need to win, and they win easy. You know, the pressure is on now, but now the managers, now that they've met and they've said what they said and nothing's happened, I see him being there for a lot longer now.
But if they've been a bag of revels for 2 years now, that surely is long enough evidence to suggest that he isn't going to be the man that eventually turns that round, isn't it?
I agree with you. But there must have been a plan at the start of the season where, you know, the people that have taken over, you know, the man who's taken over, he doesn't become a billionaire by being lucky. You don't just be lucky and become a billionaire. You know, you're very clever, you're very bright, and you do everything very calmly. If he's looked at this and gone, right, well, this is a 5-year project, the way we've got now with the fair play rule, Man United are not going to catch up Man City and Arsenal and Liverpool in the next year. It's impossible. You can't go out and spend £500 million on players now, because that can't happen. So they've got to be patient. And the only way of being patient is having a plan. And the plan is going to take time. You know, Man United have got to start walking again before they can start running. And they definitely can't start sprinting yet. And this is what everybody thinks. And I think at the moment, the one thing that would worry more than anything, Rob, is off the top of my head, who's come into that club that they bought and you've gone, oh, he was a major success. I mean, Anthony was 80-odd million pound. Are you picked up yet? Or are you fallen over?
I'm still here. Yeah.
I thought you'd fallen over when I said 80 million pound. He was 80 million. I mean, I'm not, you know, that just sums it all up. 80 million pound. You know, I'm looking at the players that they bought. He bought the boy Højlund. I like Højlund, the centre up forward, but he's a young kid. You can't put a young kid into Man United up front and go in not a very good football team and say, go on, mate, go and get me 20 goals a season. You can't do it. It's like, for me, it's so wrong. And that's me sitting on the outside. You know, I just don't know what they've done. I would have put someone like Gary Neville in charge, like in charge of the recruitment. You know, Gary's been at that club for all his career. You know, he knows football inside out. You know, you put someone like him in charge, or Rio Ferdinand, or someone like that, or even together, and you go, right, we got to build this club. You know, what players should we be bringing in? But the players they've been bringing in, I mean, I keep on going back, £80 million. Who sanctioned that? I watched him in, and I don't want to be horrible, but I watched him in Holland. He goes down the wing, he cuts in, and he bends it in the far corner. And he's done it every week in Holland. You come to the Premier League, and every single fullback virtually in the Premier League is international fullback. And they work you out, and they go, wait a minute, I'm not showing him on that foot. I'm showing him on that foot. And then you've got to come up with solutions. And that's what Saka does every week. He comes up with solutions. And this lad hasn't. And 80 million, you can't even say, you know what, we'll swallow one here and we'll get 40 for him. They won't even get 40.
Well, good news is I've not fallen over. I'm all good. This isn't one of your cha-cha-chas, Merson.
Which teams have underwhelmed us or surprised us with how much they struggled so far? I think we have a few teams that could take this award.
Yeah, so there are two Uniteds here, Manchester and Newcastle, and we can talk about Manchester. I think the biggest problem with Manchester United, let's start there because I don't want to talk about Newcastle. But the biggest problem with Manchester United is honestly, they've been kind of solid. They don't allow goals. They don't score goals, but they're scoring goals below expected. But the issue is just that they're Manchester United and they're doing this, right? Like, they're having arguably a similar season to Fulham. But that's not what we've come to expect. And Andy Edwards, who isn't here, hope he's enjoying his vacation, but he often mentions that maybe this is the new normal for them. And I don't think that's the case. There's still an aura there and there's so much money right now. And again, yes, they are solid at the back right now, but so blah. And that makes them a loser to me. You can't be Manchester United and be blah.
Yeah, I mean, what they are the second lowest goal scorers in the Premier League so far this season, and the 4 clean sheets is kind of misleading because in the other games they've really struggled, and they're kind of we said this all last season. We don't know what they are under Erik ten Hag, and they've added all these, Mazraoui, De Ligt, Ugarte this summer, Xerxes. On paper, really good signings. We thought, okay, this is it. They kind of had a wobble last season, but they're, in Europe because they won the FA Cup. They've got potential here to kind of just make that last season a bit of a blip. But I haven't seen anything to kick on. And Erik ten Hag's under real pressure, of course. But it looks like he's got the old dreaded vote of confidence over this international break. So we'll see how long that lasts. But I don't actually know. I don't know if they really want to move him on, right, with the finances and everything else concerned.
I don't know that I'd want to either. And I think he gets to the next international break unless something crazy happens. And there's good reason for that. I think he deserves a month with Ugarte. I think he deserves to see what this team looks like with Højlund and Xerxes switching off. I mean, when you haven't had your center forward and Ugarte, you're talking about a player who that was the position they targeted all summer. So you've also got all these Ajax guys who know him and are betting in. So I think he gets this month. I think it's realistic to say it could turn around. But I also think it's just as realistic to say if it doesn't, he's been given enough time.
Yeah, it's real 50-50 at the moment. Of course, their worst start in history in the Premier League. So as bad as they've been in recent years, to have that stat on you for this season just underlines what a tough start it has been for Man United. You mentioned
Man United defender Noussair Mazraoui undergoes heart procedure after Aston Villa substitution. Morocco international sidelined for a few weeks after procedure to correct irregularity that caused palpitations. Manchester United defender Noussair Mazraoui is expected to be out for a few weeks after undergoing a minor heart procedure, club sources have said. Mazraoui was substituted at half-time of United's 0-0 draw with Aston Villa on Sunday after feeling unwell and subsequently pulled out of Morocco's squad ahead of the international break after complaining of heart palpitations. The 26-year-old, signed by United from Bayern Munich for around $15 million this summer, has since successfully undergone a corrective procedure to address the irregularity. United described Mazraoui's condition as relatively common and said they expected him to make a full recovery and be available for selection again within the next few weeks. This is not the first time that Mazraoui has been affected by a heart condition. The right-back missed 3 months for Bayern in 2023 after suffering heart-related complications because of COVID-19. United aware of previous heart issue. He had tested positive for COVID during the World Cup in Qatar in late 2022 and experienced problems on holiday after the tournament. Bayern said the problem was because of a mild inflammation in his pericardium, and after undergoing regular testing he returned to action in March 2023. United were aware of the issues he had at Bayern, but this is a different condition. The loss of Mazraoui, who has made 10 appearances for United since arriving from Bayern, is another blow to embattled manager Erik ten Hag, for whom the absences are beginning to stack up, not least in defence. Left-backs Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malaysia and new centre-back signing Lainery Euro have yet to make an appearance this season due to injury, and another central defender, Harry Maguire, has been ruled out for a few weeks with a muscle injury. Malaysia has not played for United since May last year following knee surgery. Shaw last played for United in February, but Ten Hag hopes to have him back after the international break. In addition to Mazraoui, England midfielder Kobbie Mainoo, Argentina forward Alejandro Garnacho and Ivory Coast winger Amad Diallo all withdrew from international duty as injury precautions. Ten Hag was plagued by injury problems last season and will hope United are not heading for a repeat at a time when his future is under severe scrutiny and his side desperately need to return to winning ways after their worst ever start to a Premier League season. United, currently 14th in the table after taking just 8 points from their opening 7 games, are due to face Brentford on Saturday week at Old Trafford in their first game after the international break. Gareth Southgate rules himself out of running for Man United job if Erik ten Hag is sacked. Former England manager says there is no rush to return to management amid uncertainty over Dutchman's future. Gareth Southgate has effectively ruled himself out of the running for the Manchester United job by revealing he will not return to management for at least the next year. The former England manager was understood to have been one of the front-runners to succeed Erik ten Hag if United opted to make a change in the dugout. But Southgate, who stepped down as England manager in July after leading the country to back-to-back Euro finals, said on Thursday that he was taking an extended break from coaching to fully recharge his batteries after 8 years in charge of the national team. Sometimes when you are in a big role you don't realise the weight until it's gone, Southgate told the European Club Association's General Assembly. It is one of those jobs where everybody has an opinion. I am enjoying my life, so there is no rush. For 11 years I committed fully to the National Federation. I won't coach in the next year for sure. I am certain of that. When you come out of a big role you need to give your body time, your mind time. Southgate has refused to rule out a return to club management in time. He spent 3 years in charge at Middlesbrough between 2006 and 2009, but said it was unlikely he would coach another national team. A return to club football? Depending on what role that is, Southgate said. I have been fortunate to have worked with fantastic players. You've got to have excitement, passion to go to work every day. It is unlikely to be another national federation. England was from the heart. Southgate's decision removes one of the prominent candidates immediately available to United in the event of a managerial change. Former Bayern Munich coach Thomas Tuchel, whom United interviewed in May before deciding to keep faith with ten Hag, and former Chelsea manager Graham Potter are the only other two prominent figures currently out of work who have been heavily linked with the Old Trafford post. Ten Hag's position is under intense scrutiny at Old Trafford after the club's worst start to a Premier League season, despite a £200 million summer outlay taking his transfer spending to more than £600 million during his 2.5 years at the helm. The Dutchman, who is currently on holiday in his homeland, expects to still be in charge when United take on Brentford on Saturday week following the latest international break, but he is under huge pressure. United's power brokers met in London on Tuesday for a pre-planned executive committee meeting that lasted for around 6 hours, but there has been radio silence from the club since then about ten Hag's future. United board member and Ineos sports chief executive Jean-Claude Blanc refused to discuss ten Hag's future when approached by the BBC at the ECA gathering in Athens this week. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who attended Tuesday's meeting at Ineos HQ in Knightsbridge along with fellow owner Joel Glazer, United board member Sir Dave Brailsford, the club's chief executive Omar Barada, and sporting director Dan Ashworth among others, refused to offer ten Hag any public backing when asked about the manager's future last Friday. It's not my call, Ratcliffe told the BBC. United interviewed at least half a dozen managers at the end of last season before deciding to stick with ten Hag by triggering an option to extend his contract by a year to June 2026. It is thought sacking ten Hag, who took a hit to his reputed £9 million a year salary this season following the club's failure to qualify for the Champions League, could cost up to £14 million. That is a substantial figure at a time when United are operating under tight financial constraints to comply with the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. The prospect of then having to pay hefty compensation to get another manager already in work out of another club would not be an ideal scenario. Tuchel and former Brighton manager Roberto De Zerbi, now with Marseille, are thought to have been the two candidates whom United showed the most interest in at the end of last season, only to ultimately opt to appoint neither. United also spoke with Brentford manager Thomas Frank, Ipswich's Kieran McKenna, Marco Silva of Fulham and Mauricio Pochettino, who had just left Chelsea but is now in charge of the US national team. Barada and Ashworth publicly backed ten Hag around the time of United's 3-0 defeat at home to Liverpool on September 1st, and there was further private backing for the embattled manager in the wake of the shambolic 3-0 loss against Spurs at Old Trafford 11 days ago, heading into the games against Porto and Aston Villa. United subsequently threw away a 2-goal lead against Porto to trail 3-2 only for a stoppage-time header by Harry Maguire to clinch a point in the Europa League.